Yes. Bill, great to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great, Tony. How are you?
Really wonderful. I know you have a brief, we're trying to pack a lot in a short time, so I know you're just going to go straight for presentation. Maybe we'll have a couple questions for you afterwards.
Sure, I'd be glad to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you all for having me today. I'm really glad and opportunity to speak to you today about precision diagnostics. And, here at Fountain Life, our main goal for Fountain has been largely to be the change agent for healthcare. Our goal is to change all of healthcare worldwide from reactive to proactive. And what do I mean by that? Today, we really have a break-fix model, meaning that when you go to the doctor, you go when you're usually sick. You go to the doctor, usually when you show up at the doctor's office, you're at the end stage of a disease process, whether that be heart disease or neurologic disease or orthopedic care. You're usually showing up there because something has gone wrong. And I'm here to tell you the exciting part about healthcare today is we have technology available to start to detect things long before they become symptomatic and start to be able to reverse that. And with this entire change, this break-fix model, what our main goal is to stop and identify 7 of the top 10 causes of death in America. And as you all know, the number 1 cause of death in the United States today still is heart disease and worldwide. And these are the other common causes of death that shorten your life, sap your quality, and literally destroy your vitality. And the third one here is, I didn't put it on the slide because a lot of my colleagues don't like it, but it's actually hospital-acquired errors. So if you go to the hospital, you have the third leading cause of death in the United States is hospital-acquired errors. So you want to stay out of the hospital at all costs. So how do you do that? How do you use the latest technology in order to avoid that? And one of the things you have to do is get a new way of being evaluated. We are all optimists about our healthcare. We all believe that we're healthy until we're not. And the fact is, this human body that we have is amazing at covering tons and tons of symptoms that normally, don't manifest until it's a late stage process. And yet the tools that we use in healthcare to detect that disease is largely what you see here on this slide. The stethoscope was invented in 1817. Every one of these tools is still carried by your doctor in his pocket, and yet we don't use the latest technology to detect disease at its earliest stages. So medicine's really here today. We're at this really interesting vanguard where we have all this exploding technology all around us. And everything from artificial intelligence to big data, looking at robotics, genomics, all of these things are cascading onto medicine, and we have a very old delivery platform when it comes to detecting disease early. Now, we're great at sick care. We're very, very good at sick care, but our goal is to make sick care a thing of the past that you only access when you need to. So how do we do that? And I want to talk a little bit about the technology that we do and we use inside of our diagnostic platform because it's important. The fact is today, half the people who have a heart attack today will not survive, and they don't make it to the hospital in time. And yet all of these statistics we've known for the last 40 or 50 years, and yet we've made no difference in the rate of heart disease. And this was a study that was done last year, and what it showed literally is that of all the screening tests we've done for heart disease, we've made no difference in the number of people having heart attacks and the number of people dying of heart attacks. So what have we been doing? We literally have been using tests and techniques that are not effective at screening you for for heart disease. And so the technology that we like, and then what we just adopted inside of Fountain Life is this one called Clearly CCTA. And Tony, I know you've written about this in your book, and this is a fantastic technology. But the reality is that on the left, what you see is a scan of the heart. It's an AI, it's a scan that we've been doing for the last 30 or 40 years, but we've been reading it with the human eyeball. And yet on the right is what the artificial intelligence can do when it reads the same scan. Now it can only show us where all the vessels are, but more importantly, it can straighten out every single vessel and show you exactly where the plaque is in your arteries. So for the first time, we have a tool that can tell us exactly where your heart disease is and how to start to reverse it. And this is revolutionary technology. It's only about a year old. And yet, unfortunately, most doctors don't know about it because they haven't, it's not approved by Medicare, it's not approved by insurance. And so the goal with our diagnostic platform is to start to give you the tools to become CEO of your own health so that you can take control of your future. And what we can do by doing this test is we can tell you exactly how much plaque you have and give you a score. It's called your reversible plaque score. So it's very important that you start to access the technology that we have today, because otherwise you're going to the doctor once a year where you may or may not have disease picked up. I can tell you, using the old tools of healthcare, the stethoscope, the otoscope, by the time I hear something, it's relatively late. By the time I can feel something in your body, it's late. The reality is you need to start accessing technology that can tell you what the status of your health is long before it becomes symptomatic. And so, once again, we are in the process of identifying new technology that's FDA approved, that is safe, but most doctors don't know about it because it's neither not covered by insurance or Medicare. And so the goal here is to democratize access through our platform. So how do we do that with precision diagnostics? Number one, you need to know what the basis of your health is. We don't know what the status of your health is or what to correct unless we can measure it. So we do this by doing full body and brain MRI. We look at epigenetics or genetics analysis. We look at your blood. We look at your microbiome. We look at your bone density. We look at your coronary scan and your cancer test. And so we'll talk about each of these. So the CCTA we've already talked about. This is a great way to look at artificial intelligence and see how your heart is performing and whether or not you have significant plaque or not, so that we can start to address that. Second thing we do is a full body MRI. We look at 10,000 slices head to toe so that we can detect everything from cancer to liver fat to body composition to anything that's going on. And unfortunately, this is what I would have liked my mother to have had. My mom passed away 3 years ago from ovarian cancer. This would have been something, if she'd have gotten it 5 years ago or 6 years ago, we would have detected that ovarian cancer with a very simple outpatient test and been able to correct and cure her. And unfortunately, she passed away 3 years ago because we did not have access to this technology. So once again, we're trying to democratize access to this technology so that everybody doesn't have to suffer the same fate. The other thing we do is a DEXA scan, and we can tell you exactly what your bone density is. We also look at your muscle mass. We can tell exactly how much muscle mass you have, how much fat you have, and also what your bone density is, because this is really critical, especially for men and women as they age. We do a very in-depth executive blood panel, and we use tests that a lot of people don't use. A lot of the tests you see on this test may be common. However, there's others that we do very commonly inside of our ecosystem that your doctor may not order. And one of these is testosterone. We measure everybody's testosterone because the reality is a lot of people don't have it measured. And we've had a lot of patients come in that are suffering from profound depression. And what we find is their testosterone is low, whether they be young males or old males. And once we restore that, they get their vitality back, they get their neural function back, they get their physical function back, and their sexual function back. So it's very critical that you have a comprehensive blood test. And then more importantly, the other thing we do is measure your biologic age. We actually have the tools now to tell you exactly how old you are physiologically by doing special measurements on your DNA. Up until now, we did not have this technology till 3 or 4 years ago. And now we can tell you that because you want to know what your biologic age is versus your chronologic age so that we can help you reverse your biologic age and extend your healthy human lifespan. We also look at your gut health. We look at all the bacteria in your gut. You have 80 trillion cells in your body. You have 10 times as many bacteria. And those bacteria have every profound effects on your body, everything from brain function to heart function to inflammatory levels. And we want to make sure we optimize those through a combination of diet and probiotics. But once again, we have to know what your baseline is. And then we do whole genome sequencing. We look at all of your genes, particularly 22,000 active genes that you have, and we analyze it with artificial intelligence to determine what's optimal for you. What's the best genetic, what's the best diet for you based on your genetics? What's the best exercise program? And do you have any disease-specific genome issues that we need to be able to address? Most excitingly, we just started doing this test about 9 months ago. And for those of you who haven't heard about it, it's called the Grail Gallery test. And it's a fantastic test because for the very first time, we can take a blood sample from you. And with that blood sample, we can detect up to 1 of 50 different types of cancer. So this is revolutionary. And we're really excited to be able to offer that to our clients and our members, because the fact is right now, most of the cancers that we see today that are commonly screened for with mammography, mammography and colon cancer and things of this nature are going to miss about 80% of the cancers that are out there. So using this new technology is what allows us to detect cancer at its earliest stage. And you want to catch it early, because when we catch it early is when we can treat it effectively. And with that whole body MRI that I talked about earlier, we actually had one of our patients come in and he had totally asymptomatic, and we found bladder cancer on him. And now with this new test, what we found is some people are coming in and they have a positive test and we can't even see anything on their scan. For instance, we had somebody come in with the Grail test recently and they have kidney cancer. Well, we scan their kidneys and we cannot see it, which means we're catching it at such an early stage that we'll be able to effectively treat it without any adverse effects. And so what's the key to the longevity? We need to know your baseline, but then we talked about, like Bob just talked about, we want to optimize your performance, because knowing what your baseline is important, but then how do we improve your health? And we do that with therapeutic exercise, hormone optimization therapy, peptides, sexual wellness, nutrition, a lot of these. But more importantly, we use regenerative medicine, and we will be able to show you exactly what the latest cutting edges are in the area of regenerative medicine. You guys spoke about stem cells, amazing cellular technologies that are out there, but there are other technologies as well, like plasmapheresis and using some of these drugs that are out there that can slow the aging process. So all of this is important because you need to know what the status of your health is. And the fact is, you're not going to get this routine assessment from your average doctor's office. And quite frankly, most doctors are even unaware that these diagnostic tests exist because they go to medical school to learn sick care. They don't go to medical school to find out how we keep you healthy. And the reality is, we're going to have to change medicine, just like we changed training pilots to being able to, we train pilots to go through all kinds of training to avoid the catastrophic event so that you don't wind up, with the engine falling off or the wheels falling off of the airplane, and we find out about it after the fact. What we do now is most of the time your pilot trains for an emergency, but most of the time he just adjusts the flight plan. And we really believe the doctors of the future and the doctors today need to be retrained on how to keep you healthy long-term. So it's great that you can come to a Fountain Center and get all this diagnostics, but ultimately we want to have you have access to this data in your own hands. And this is where our operating system comes in. And our goal here is to digitize, dematerialize, and democratize access to your care. And so we use an avatar. And so this avatar is on your phone, it's available. And this is what we're working on spreading throughout the world over the next 5 years. And what's exciting about it is now you'll be able to look at your phone, look at your avatar, and know exactly what the status of your health is. It's really your digital twin. And that's what we're trying to create, because once you know the status of your health, you can take the necessary steps to optimize your health and increase your healthy lifespan. Because really it's about data, and that's where we are. We want you to have as much data about your health as an N of 1. We believe that you should be treated individually as an individual, not according to population standards. And you can only do that with the right data, and our goal is to provide that for you. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I would encourage all of you to do everything you can to get the best treatment that you can, but more importantly, take control of your own health and become CEO of your own health.
Bill Kapp, stay with me for a moment. Give him a hand, first of all, Bill Kapp. Stay with us, Bill. Yeah. I just wanted to comment, the Grail test, for example, is so important because, as Bill said, I hope you heard that 80% of cancers are missed through traditional testing in this area. And this breakthrough has only been around less than a year. But, you have people come in and, if you read some of the studies like the National Cancer Society, they show that if you discover cancer at stage 3 or stage 4, you have an 80% chance of dying. I prefer the 20% chance of living, but their point is well made. It's harder to turn around. But when you catch, like, for example, you gave with this man with a kidney cancer, and it's stage 1, it's a 20-minute outpatient procedure, and the person's fine, and they never have to go through any of that. If you catch it at stage 1 or 2, your chances of survival are 88 to 99.9%. Similarly, I did the CCTA scan, and because Bill called me up and said, this is the greatest, he said, I don't want to sound like I'm overstating. Bill's always like this, but this is one of the greatest breakthroughs in cardiology we've seen in a decade. He goes, there's nothing like it. Instead of looking at this grade mass and trying to guess, and I've seen people, I saw someone make a comment, they got a test and they had 0. Highly unlikely you had 0. That sounds like a really weak test. This test goes in and uses AI and opens up literally every single area. And you can see, is this calcified, which means it's okay? Or is this something that can break off and become a heart attack or a stroke? And I did it for my father-in-law, who was 80 years old, and he was kind of thinking, I'm getting old. He came out of the thing, and he was clean as a whistle. And he's like, I could live another 20 years. I could live to 100 years old. So it's not just about, prevention. It's also about performance. In fact, our center up in Pittsburgh, we work with the entire Pittsburgh Steelers team to increase their performance, their strength. But Peter, you convinced me. I wasn't really big on getting all the tests and data initially. Give us your thoughts about why it's so important to get the data that's available to us today that we never had before.
Yeah, the challenge is some people say to themselves, listen, I don't want to know. And it's like, no, that's wrong. You do want to know. Because our ability to actually address that and solve it is either here today or it's changing so fast. In other words, for example, right, CRISPR technology, which was in the lab, first identified a decade ago, got the Nobel Prize 2 years ago, and today, and we'll hear about this from Dr. George Church and others, CRISPR is not treating genetic diseases, it's curing genetic diseases.
Yes.
Right? Injection in the back of the eye, and all of a sudden your genetic blindness is cured.